Hello, good evening. Is it evening? I think it's evening at this point. Let me know how the audio sound. Let me know how the audio sound. I don't have no headphones right now, so let me know how the audio is. I think it should be good. I checked it a little bit. I think it should be good. But we're going to be continuing to read Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Y. Davis. But before we do that, I do want to say, never mind. I do want to say this, that back in early June, Jay Hanley had said, when Jay Hanley had announced that the investigations for the shooting of Jose and the shooting of Falsoons, when he announced that they were complete, he said that his goal was to have it done, to have those made public, to have those announced by the end of the month. As we are currently sitting, it's Thursday, and it's July 1st. It's July 1st, so we should be at a point where we expect those. Thank you. We should be at a point where we're waiting every day for those hearings. We're waiting every day for those findings to be released. We're waiting every day, looking every day, checking every day to see when of those findings are going to be released. He said at the end of the month, it's now July. So we are on chapter 9. Again, this is Angela Y. Davis, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Chapter 9 is called, let me move this back a little bit, Political and Protest. My fault. The wind is crazy. The wind is crazy over here. Political activism and protest from the 1960s to the age of Obama. And this is a speech at Davidson College on February 12th, 2013. Thank you so much and good evening, everyone. First of all, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here at Davidson College to help you celebrate Black History Month. I always welcome the opportunity to come to North Carolina because I spent a number of years of my own activist career doing work in this state. So first of all, let me say that Black History Month falls in the month of February, about which people used to complain because it's the shortest month of the year. But there are specific reasons, including the birthday of Frederick Douglass, why we observe Black history during this month. And I should also say that since we began to celebrate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King in the middle of January, we've extended our February celebration. So now at least we have a month and a half. And those of us who recognize the constitutive role that Black women have played in the struggle for women's rights in this country continue to celebrate Black History Month during Women's History Month, which means that we now have 2.5 months to specifically recognize Black history. That's not that bad. Black history, whether here in North America or in Africa or in Europe, has always been infused with the spirit of resistance, an activist spirit of protest and transformation. So I'm happy to be invited to address the topic of social protest and transformation from the 60s to the present. When we celebrate Black History Month, it is not primarily for the purpose of representing individual Black people in the numerous roles as first to break down barriers in the many fields that have been historically closed to people of color, although it is extremely important to acknowledge these first. But rather, we celebrate Black History Month, I believe, because it is a centuries-old struggle to achieve and expand freedom for us all. And so Black History Month is indeed American history, but it is also world history. There is a reason why in 2008 there was such a planetary euphoria when Obama was elected. That a Black man who identified with the spirit of the historical struggle for black liberation. Let me start that over. That a black man who identified with the spirit of the historical struggle for black liberation could be elected president of the United States was a cause for rejoicing everywhere in the world, because people everywhere have identified within this sustained struggle for freedom, or what Cedric Robinson calls the black radical tradition. The black radical tradition. It is a tradition that can be claimed by people everywhere, regardless of race, regardless of nationality, regardless of geographical location. Black Americans have been the beneficiaries of solidarity generated in all parts of the world. Frederick Douglass traveled to Europe to gain support for anti-slavery abolition. Ida B. Wells traveled to England and Ireland and Scotland to generate support for the anti-lynching movement. And then, of course, Canada offers sanctuary from slavery. When the fugitive slave law prevented those who escaped from slavery from finding refuge anywhere inside the United States, the Underground Railroad had to extend up to Canada. And then, of course, we can talk about cases such as the Scottsboro 9. My mother was one of the many activists who joined the struggle to free the Scottsboro 9 in the 1930s and the 1940s. An international campaign developed, although it would be many decades before the last of the Scottsboro 9s were freed. In the 1950s, there was a notorious case in North Carolina, known as the kissing case. In Monroe, North Carolina, in 1958, a young black boy, about 6 years old, kissed a white girl whom he was playing with, and was arrested on attempted rape charges. I mentioned this case not so much because of its spectacular character, but because of the media attention generated in Europe that eventually led to the freeing of this young boy. And then, of course, there are numerous political prisoners who have been the beneficiaries of global solidarity movements. I include myself among those political prisoners. When I was in jail, there were campaigns literally all over the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, in the former Soviet Union, in Germany, both East and West. You heard from Professor Kaplan about the current case, whose plight is a subject of more public discussion in Europe than here in the United States. And then, of course, the founding of the Black Panther Party not only captured... And then, of course, the founding of the Black Panther Party not only captured the imagination of young people all over the world. My fault. The wind is so crazy. I swear, this might be the windiest... Back here, this might be the windiest spot in the city. This might be the windiest spot in the city. Okay. Let's see. And then, of course, the founding of the Black Panther Party not only captured the imagination of young people all over the United States within a very short period of time. There were Black Panther Party chapters in every major city in this country. And you'll have the opportunity to hear from the head of the Black Panther Party in Winston-Salem next Monday, I believe. But Black Panther parties were created in places like New Zealand. People were struggling against racism in New Zealand. Folks that were struggling against racism in New Zealand created a Black Panther Party. In Brazil, there was a Black Panther Party. In Israel, there was a Black Panther Party. So I want us to think about the very capacious framework within which the protests and the struggles for black liberation evolved. People all over the world have been inspired by the Black Freedom Movement to forge activist movements addressing oppressive conditions in their own countries. I'm friends with. This is making me think on after the initial protest. Oh, that's a. And then during the initial protest, maybe I should put a hat on. During the initial protest last year after May 30th, I have a friend who's in Denmark. I have a friend in Denmark, and she had posted on her story of people in the streets, hundreds of people in the streets, and it was all chanting Black Lives Matter, all chanting different things that was sparked after the video, the murder of George Floyd. I was hearing her talk about these things on a global level, and I've seen that personally is amazing to think about. It's amazing. I have a friend was telling me that one of the people that she went to school with had gotten arrested, and I believe it was either Italy or France during a protest, and they had chained themselves to light poles. They had changed themselves to poles. And so the idea that it's a global movement, it's people all over the world have been inspired and have sparked movements in their own countries based on things that have happened here. Okay. In fact, let me see, is that where I am? Yeah, that is. In fact, you might say that there has been a symbiotic relationship between struggles abroad and struggles at home. Relationships of inspiration and mutuality. The historical... Wait for this. Damn! That's so many. Damn. Oh, they really made that part. Oh, there's more. Damn. That's crazy. Okay, we can get back on track. We're gonna get back on track. Okay. Let's see. The historical South African freedom struggle was inspired in part by the historical Black American freedom struggle. The Black American freedom struggle was inspired in part by the South African freedom struggle. In fact, I can remember growing up in the most segregated city in the country, Birmingham, Alabama, and learning about South Africa, because Birmingham was known as the Johannesburg of the South. Dr. Martin Luther King was inspired by Gandhi to engage in nonviolent campaigns against racism. And in India, the Dalits, formerly known as untouchables, and other people who've been struggling against the caste system, who have been inspired by the struggles of Black Americans. More recently, young Palestinians have organized freedom rides, recapitulating the freedom rides of the 1960s by boarding segregated buses in the occupied territory of Palestine and being arrested as the black and white freedom riders were in the 60s. They announced their project to be the Palestinian Freedom Riders. So I want us to think about this more capacious framework within which to consider Black history. I want to express concern that our collective relationship to history in this country is seriously flawed. Of course, many of you are familiar with the William Faulkner quote that bears repeating: "The past is never dead. The past is never dead. It's not even passed. I was not familiar with that quote. That is a good quote nonetheless. I'm going to read it again. The past is never dead. The past is never dead. It's not even past. And so we live with the ghost of our past. We live with the ghost of slavery. And I wonder why, in 2013, we are not vigorously celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. Do you find that strange? I know that Obama issued a proclamation on December 31st, urging people to celebrate the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. But I don't know anyone who did. Do you? Then I'm also wondering what will be on the agenda for the 150th anniversary of the passage of the 13th Amendment. Maybe another film? So I want to pursue this theme of living with the ghosts of our past. I've been asked to talk about the protest movement of the 60s. But those protest movements would not have been necessary. But those protest movements would not have been necessary. It would not have been necessary to create a mid-century black freedom movement had slavery been comprehensively abolished in the 19th century. The movement we call the Civil Rights Movement, and that was called by most of its participants the Freedom Movement, reveals an interesting slippage between freedom and civil rights, as if civil rights had colonized the whole space of freedom. That the only way to be free is to acquire civil rights within the existing framework of society. Had slavery been abolished in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation, or in 1865 through the 13th Amendment, black people would have enjoyed full and equal citizenship, and it would not have been necessary to create a new movement. One of the most hidden eras of U.S. history is a period of radical Reconstruction. It was certainly the most radical period. There were black elected officials. Then we had to wait more. My fault. The wind. There were black elected officials. Then we had to wait more than another century to get them back. There was a development of public education. People in this country are still unaware of the fact that former slaves brought public education to the South. That white kids in the South would never have had the opportunity to get an education had it not been for the persistent campaigns for education. Because education was equivalent to liberation. My fault. Because education was equivalent to liberation. No liberation without education. My fault. Wait. And then, of course, there was economic development during that brief period. I'm talking about the period between 1865 and 1877. Radical Reconstruction. As a matter of fact, many progressive laws were passed when black people were in. As a matter of fact, many progressive laws were passed when black people were in the legislatures of various states. Progressive laws with respects to women's rights as well, not just with respects to the issues of race. I've been thinking that if we really manage to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, and we have another couple of years between now and the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment, every person in this country, from high school to the postgraduate level, should read. Do you say? I don't know. There's some contention on how to say this. I say Du Bois. I've heard Du Bois as well. Should read W-E-B, Du Bois. I think it's Du Bois. I'm gonna start saying Du Bois. Du Bois is Black Reconstruction in America. In the 1960s, we confronted issues that should have been resolved in the 1860s. And I'm thinking, and my fault. And I'm making this point because what happens when 2060 rolls around? Will people still be addressing these same issues? And I also think it's important for us to think forward and to imagine future history in a way that is not restrained by our own lifetimes. Oftentimes people say, well, if it takes that long, I'll be dead. Oftentimes people say, well, if it takes that long, I'll be dead. So what? Everybody dies, right? And if people who are involved in the struggle against slavery, I'm thinking about people like Frederick Douglass or Ida B. Wells in the struggle against lynching, if they had that very narrow, individualistic sense of their own contributions, where would we be today? And so we have to learn how to imagine the future in terms that are not restricted to our own lifetimes. I like that. That's something that we've been talking about quite a bit down here. That I'm of the opinion, I'm of the mindset. This is not. First, I gotta say, I don't have no kids. But this work that's being done, this movement that's being made, these things that are happening now, it's not necessarily for me. It's for the next generation to come along. It's to keep moving forward. It's to keep making progress. To keep creating environments that the environment that we want to live in. I think I'm good. Am I not good? Okay. Hold on. We're gonna. Is the audio good? Somebody comment right now. Is the audio good? If the audio is good, I'm not about to put these headphones on. Maybe I should. Maybe I should put these headphones on. Keep my hair in place a little bit. I'm gonna do that. Give me 1 second. The audio is good. Okay. Oh yeah, it's good. There we go. Let's see, where are we? There we are. One of the things I did in North Carolina in the 70s was to battle with the Klan, because the Ku Klux Klan really controlled this state. I was telling some people during dinner that I can remember when there were big billboards of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan welcoming visitors to the various cities and towns of North Carolina. And members of the Klan appeared publicly in their garbs. As I told people at dinner, I helped to organize 2 major marches in Raleigh, North Carolina. Through my involvement in a multiracial organization, the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, we had some of our white members hang out at the Klan bars in order to gather intelligence about what the Klan was planning. That's nuts. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's what we've been missing. We need some of y'all white people to go to these Back to Blue rallies. I would be more for that if I thought the people that go to these rallies actually planned anything or had some type of strategic planning sessions. but it seemed like these uh, it seemed like these Back the Blue rallies is just like an open whites only bar. That's really what it seemed like. Just an open white only bar. Just a space for a bunch of white racist people to gather and get drunk and I don't know. My fault. Okay. We were actually very frightened that they might, given the history of the Klan committing violence against black people, not only in the past, but then in the 60s and the 70s, we were afraid that they might be targeting us. When we speak about the Klan as symbolic of the whole face of racism, when we think about racial segregation, we often assume that it originated in slavery. But the Ku Klux Klan was founded in the aftermath of slavery, right? Racial segregation was instituted in the aftermath of slavery, in the aftermath of the Black Radical Reconstruction, in an attempt to manage free black people. What did it mean during those days for people who had been historically subjugated and kept in chains to have the opportunity to express themselves freely? Well, there were those who did not want to see this. Of course, there were those who wanted to bring slavery back into the picture. But there were many strategies that were used to manage free black bodies. Had those strategies not been implemented, such as the violence associated with the Ku Klux Klan, such as the convict lease system, which created the basis for the punishment industry today, had that not happened, free black people would have been far more successful in pushing for democracy for all people in this country. The struggles of the 1960s would have been unnecessary if black people had acquired full citizenship in the aftermath of slavery. But when we focus our attention on the Southern struggles of the 1950s and 60s, specifically when we think about the Montgomery bus boycott, we inevitably evoke Dr. Martin Luther King. We also think about Rosa Parks. But we should be focusing But we should be focusing on Joanne Robinson as well, who wrote the book The Montgomery Bus Boycott and the woman who started it. As many times as I've spoken about during As many times as I've spoken during Black History Month, I never tire of urging people to remember that it wasn't a single individual or two who created that movement. That as a matter of fact, it was largely women within collective context, black women, poor black women who were maids, washerwomen, and cooks. These were the people who collectively refused to ride the bus. Okay. I think that, we're going to stop there. We're going to stop reading there. Need to get that time to settle in, think in. But I want to also read, as I'm reading this book again, I'm on this chapter called Slavery Without Submission, Emancipation Without Freedom. Let me see. My fault, I should have been more prepared. There we go. It's this quote right here. This is, let me see. Okay, here we go. This is a quote from Frederick Douglass on July 4th, 1852. This is a little excerpt. There is not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Okay, we're gonna end it right there.